Welcome to another episode of the Battlefields and Bourbon podcast, the podcast where we sit and sip, talk all things American Civil War history and bourbon whiskey. I'm Jack, joined as always by my co-host Elijah, and this podcast is sponsored by the Shenandoah Valley Battlefields National Historic District, so if you want to support the podcast, consider becoming a member of the Shenandoah Valley Battlefields National Historic District. Elijah, where are we coming from today?
Not from the Bell House.
No.
So we are here at off-site, first time off-site at Devil's Due Distillery here in Kearneysville, West Virginia. And we are joined by none other than Mr. Wylie McDade of Devil's Due Distillery to kind of guide us through the episode. So Wylie, thanks for accommodating us. Thanks for having us on. And what do we got tonight?
Yeah, thank you guys so much for having me on today. Welcome to the distillery. If I get to describe to everybody, we are sitting back in our barrel room in the distillery, surrounded by whiskey barrels. We have a variety of 15-gallon and 53-gallon whiskey barrels back here, aging various bourbons, rye, and wheat whiskeys. Made the traditional way. Made the old-fashioned way.
Yeah.
Maybe like they made it back during the Civil War.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, this is the perfect setting for a podcast. I mean, surrounded by all the barrels and everything. Got our nice armchairs here, so we are definitely set up. So obviously, to start this episode, this is going to be more of a distillery-specific topic, more like some might remember from episode 5 when we had Mr. Benheim from Broken Barrel Whiskey Company. This is going to be more of one of those episode topics, not so much a Civil War history topic tonight. So with that, we're going to have a couple different pours this evening, not necessarily one specific featured pour. So Wylie, what do we got first on the menu?
Yeah, I've got two great whiskeys to try today. The first one is our high rye bourbon. Now that high rye bourbon, I'm looking at the card here, laid down May 6th of 2022. So coming up on 3 years old now.
Wow.
Nice. Good nose on it though. Very sweet for high rye.
Yeah.
But there is that spice that peeks through.
You know, I think most rye bourbons on the market, I think they flirt around maybe 6 to 8% rye in the mash bill. This one almost 18%. So we're sitting on a 75% corn, 17% rye. Let me do my math here. 9% malt on this high rye bourbon. This one now aged for almost 3 years in toasted and charred white American oak in the 53-gallon barrel. Should have all of the sweetness characteristics of the barrel, the smoke in the oak, with a touch of spice and a good malt finish. This particular one that we're tasting today is coming in right about probably 123 proof out of the barrel.
That's one thing I forgot to mention is these are all drawn straight from the barrel just minutes ago. These aren't being poured from a bottle. These are pulled straight from the oak. So this is a pretty cool experience for us. And probably the truest form of your whiskey. I mean, you're coming straight out of the barrel. There's nothing else to it other than that. But
a few chunks of char on the bottom you can chew on.
Yeah, a little snack for later.
Yeah, a little snack. No, this is very, I was ready to get like smacked in the mouth with the high proof. I've compared it for other people that when I've tried like super high proofs, it's like I've told people it's like drinking splinters, you know, like it's like the splinters are in my throat, but not with this. I mean, this was super smooth, and we've been joking on the podcast for the past couple episodes that I've turned myself into I'm a high rye guy. And we're working on stickers that people can buy. I'll say high rye guy, but no, I really enjoy this. This is great.
Yeah, and the one thing I really like about what you guys do with your cask strengths, you can really get that smokiness, and that's not something that you normally taste in some other ones, but I like that it just punches through. But that's a good one for sure. Definitely a smooth sipper. That's a good one.
I can hear your lips smacking over there.
I know it is. It's a little weird at first. Yeah.
So a little bit of highlights on this whiskey. The grains are all grown within 12 miles of the distillery.
Wow.
You know, in the winemaking world, they have their, what do they call it, Ken? Their terroir. You know, the earth that the grapes are grown in lends flavor to, unique flavor by region to the grape that is grown. Mm-hmm. We use that word sometimes around here. It's not necessarily designed for whiskey, but I think what makes ours unique is that it's coming from the soils right around here, and it differentiates it from one, maybe even, grains even grown a few 100 miles from here.
Oh, absolutely.
Just because of what the earth is providing to the plant. And then that final characteristic that it imparts onto the grain itself. And so you get, it's kind of neat. We could open a distillery 10 miles away from each other and use all the same materials. And there's a guaranteed chance that they're just not ever going to taste the same. So it's kind of one thing we like to use to help set us apart. And there's not a lot of it helps reduce competition in this industry because, we don't strive to be better. We just strive to be different. And that's a good way to, keeping it close and local, to set yourself apart.
Yeah, and I mean, there's definitely something to that for sure. I mean, it's the same thing as like if you're having some strawberries, if you grow some strawberries in your backyard, would you rather have the ones from your backyard or the ones from the grocery store where you don't know where they're coming from? So like the fact that this is local lends to a degree of quality, and I'm definitely a fan.
I think that's what really got me going about you guys at first because I'm fairly new to the bourbon scene and the whiskey scene as a whole. As of like last year when Elijah wanted to start the podcast, I never, it was like beer and that's it. Cause I was, I'm only 22 and so it's very, very fresh, very new to me. And Elijah was like, there's actually some distilleries around Winchester. So the first one I ever kind of went to was here with Elijah. Mm-hmm. And that was the one thing I took away was the grains being locally sourced. And I thought that was something, I don't know if it's the weird historian preservationist in me that loves how everything's so local. We touched on it a little bit during our Christmas episode back in December when I picked the cherry bounce that you all do.
Oh, yeah.
And how those cherries were, I think it just says like right on there, the farm, it's, just miles down the road from here.
Twin Ridge.
Yeah.
It's almost June. I was telling you guys earlier, yeah. We're going to select a few barrels that will be, I think, fully have come to age by this fall, and the cherries come on the tree in June. And so the cherries will be pulled off the tree from about 2 miles from here. They'll be brought over in bulk, and then we will pit the cherries and drop those cherries. You get in a 15-gallon barrel, about 8 pounds.
Wow. And
a 53-gallon barrel, about 30 pounds of cherries we put in. And then the last 6 months of that aging process, alcohol, if you classify it as a chemical, it's a solvent, right? And and what it's going to do, it's going to break those cherries down. It's going to draw all the flavor, the color, the essence of that cherry out. You get left with a little tiny gray cherry at the end. Now, let me tell you, they pack a punch, though.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, yeah.
I think y'all have posted those pictures of those before, just that all those cherries in a big pile. But what, I guess, bouncing off that, what inspired you? And we'll go a little bit into the whole history of Devil's Due, but specifically with the cherry bounce, who was the mastermind behind, I want to do a cherry bounce bourbon?
I'll give you the history. I don't want to sound cliched, but literally the recipe's out of Martha Washington's.
I love it.
Cookbook.
I love it.
Right up our alley.
And to support that, look, Jefferson County, you guys talk a lot about battlefields in the Civil War, but Jefferson County is much older than that. The revolutionary things that occurred here are significant. Charlestown's named after George Washington's brother.
Yeah.
He lived in Happy Retreat. Happy Retreat is now shepherded by a man named Walter Washington, who's 7th generation Washington, spitting image.
Yeah.
It's strange. Yeah. Of George Washington, right? The Washington, they haven't left. They're still here. Well, George owned a tremendous amount of land around here. Mm-hmm. He grew a lot of grain around here. He opened his distillery, though, at Mount Vernon. In fact, that distillery has been rebuilt. There was a fire in it. I don't remember the year, but some time ago. He was the biggest distiller in the country at the turn of the 18th century. Mm-hmm. But yeah, so a tremendous amount of history out here. Well, it so turns out that when George would travel anywhere when he would ever go anywhere, he had an entourage that would go with him. And so because there was that many people and there was going to be that many wagons, there was going to be that much material that would go with George Washington wherever he went, there was a manifest. And those manifests, I've seen them, copies of them. And on almost every single one of them, there is a measure of 4 to 8 quarts of cherry bounce on all of his. He made rye whiskey. He was, like I said, I think he was up to like 11,000 gallons a year or something like that at one point, making the biggest distillery in the United States. But always a measure of cherry bounce was brought with him. I think he enjoyed drinking it, but I think he enjoyed giving it away. It was from his property. His family was making this, and it was so important. It was included in Martha Washington's cookbook, and so when we develop spirits, well, those are the kind of stories we look for, and then we latch on to, and then we try and make an expression that was hopefully very similar to maybe what he was drinking back in the day.
Yeah, well, that's exciting to hear that there was the history influence in doing it. And yeah, for folks listening, if you don't understand this region of the country, especially the Valley and then Virginia as a whole, in West Virginia today, but yeah, the Washingtons had a massive, footprint here in Jefferson County, West Virginia. There's the high school here, Washington High School, which is named after Washington. And you can't turn a corner of a road without stepping on something Washington around here, which I love about Jefferson County.
Yeah, any of these historic homes around here, they have some sort of Washington influence.
Clay mine, and
surveyed or helped build or something. It was either George or one of his relatives had some hand in building these homes.
Yeah, I was at a house earlier today in Clark County, and 1750s home, and the gentleman talking about it was like, yeah, Washington surveyed this land and this house when he was 18 years old. And it's like, he was everywhere.
He was in our backyards.
When he was 18, this was the edge of the frontier.
Yeah.
I mean, it's pretty much, it didn't, I don't know. When did people start crossing the Ohio?
Oh, shoot.
Yeah. I mean, this was literally a frontier land where we're sitting right now.
And he was doing it as a teenager,
Yeah.
It's crazy. Yeah.
Getting after it at that age.
Yeah.
But I think that's something that draws us to you guys as well, is the our passion for historic preservation as far as Civil War history goes. But you guys are also doing your part in historic preservation by bringing these recipes, to life from President Washington's days, and reimagining them and giving them out back to the public as a well, not giving them back, but you know what I mean.
Yeah.
Like
providing an opportunity for people to experience it.
Yeah.
I mean, having a little bit of history around here is important. But we're in a business this is an old business.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, older than written records old. People have been chasing and understanding what alcohol is for, time before we can remember, but at least the last 10,000 years. I think the first stills that I ever heard of were from 6,000 BC. In Egypt, clay pots.
Wow.
As you travel through history, I think man has always been playing around with alcohol. In 6,000 BC, you were probably a priest. Sometime in between that, as we move forward, maybe you were a shaman. People who had, understanding of this. By the time you got to the Dark Ages, maybe you were an alchemist. This is when aquavit was when it was getting a name, when spirits were actually becoming known to mankind.
Mm-hmm.
And you move along and you see that the distillation became a part of everyday life. But it doesn't take long to look around the barrel room and see that the vessel that the whiskey's held in is the same vessel that we've been using for thousands and thousands of years, the white oak vessel. It was, white oak has I find it interesting because I'm a distiller, but it's been such an important part of humanity. It was probably the shipbuilders that figured it out first, that it has this unique quality to keep water out of your boat. If you jam two pieces of white oak together tight enough, they swell up and they seal, and that's what you see in the barrel. So when you figured, well, I can use white oak to keep water out of my boat, well, now I've got to trade something, and I can use white oak to keep wine in the barrel. Once that was figured out, then it became the standard vessel for liquids until they developed glass and plastic, and really plastic, because glass can only be so big. Just because the way it is. And so throughout time, everything changed except not this industry.
Yeah.
This industry has not changed very much since we started. Our still, we run a column still. It's probably the only technological advancement in distillation since they started making stills. You got a pot and a column. And so everything is done exactly the same way. We're very close to the earth here. I like to be still, like we still go out to the farm. We still, we know the local farmers. Our corn comes from the local dairy 2 miles from here. Our rye, our wheat, our malt. A lot of times our malt, when I can get it, comes from the local brewery over in Ripon at the guys over at Ripon Farm Lodge. They have a big farm over there too, and they grow some specialty grains for us. And so we know where the grain's coming from. We know how it's being grown. We spend a lot of time in the field with these guys. And now we're even contracting local farmers to grow heirloom corns for us.
Oh man.
I told you guys I want to talk about this. We've got, for any of your listeners, we've got a box set coming out, 4 whiskeys. It's actually, you can see it. It's right behind my head here. And those 4 bottles represent 4 different heirloom corns, a blue corn, a Bloody Butcher corn, which is a red corn, and Amanda Palmer, which is kind of like a rainbow corn. It's got all the different colors on the kernels. And then Amanda Palmer, and then a Wapsie Valley, which is kind of an orangey yellow corn. Occasionally you get a little red kernel on those. They're not grown anymore. These are, when you were growing up as a kid, these were called Indian corn.
Yeah.
And they came around to go on your porch at Halloween.
Yeah, decoration.
Decorative.
Yeah.
But it's because those corns, they're just not as hardy as today's corn. Most of the corn we use is called Yellow Dent number 2. It's the most widely grown corn in the United States. And the difference is that these heirloom corns are very, very tall. They have very, very scrawny stalks, and they only have a couple of ears on them. And so the yields off them are not high. And because their stalks can be upwards of 15 feet tall, I mean, these are big plants. They can get knocked over very easily in the wind. And so they're really prone to crop damage and low yield. Now, when you look at the new hybridized corns that people have been breeding over, the last, I don't know, probably since George Washington, and, here and south of here, they've become shorter and stalkier. They look like porcupines covered in corn ears. And so the yields have gone up tremendously. And so, a lot of the vast majority of our bourbon is made from corn like that. But when we looked at the heirloom corns, those 4 varieties, we had to get them from a specialty producer, which is now we're trying to bring back into county because those corns were sourced in Pennsylvania, but with our friends at Dancing Star Farm. You ever want to get some wild grains, head up there.
Yeah.
It's a pretty neat place. The guy's got a little bit of everything up there. But we wanted to bring them back, and we wanted to mash and ferment them at purity. And so we picked each one. The mash bills are 93% heirloom corn by variety, 7% malt to do our starch conversion so that we could actually ferment the grains, and then distilled in small batches, aged here on site. And now we get the chance to pop those bottles open and see what those old world corns taste like. In other words, probably tasting bourbon a lot more like it tasted back during the Revolutionary and the Civil War when these were the corns that were available to people.
So in your opinion, soon to be released, box that people can buy, can they buy them one-off, or is it all together in the box? Got to get the...
It'll be so we're going to release, in the next 2 to 3 weeks, we'll release about 75 4-bottle box sets. Okay. And then the residuals will be available for single bottle purchase.
Okay.
I can't guarantee how many there are going to be, but I can tell you they're going to go fast. But if you guys are interested, keep an eye out for us on Facebook for release day on that one, because I think they're going to go quick.
So in your opinion, do you have a favorite out of the 4, or does one strike you different than the others?
So I've tasted all of them, and they were all done in pretty much the exact same format. And yes, in my opinion, there are striking differences between each one, and subtleties between them, in the varying level of sweetnesses and the varying level of corn flavors that come through on each one. And so I think they're each unique by themselves, and they'll be real fun to maybe taste side by side.
Yeah, that's awesome.
That's exciting.
Super cool. And then speaking of more new releases. What do we have beside of us next to the line?
Oh, wait. I got another special one. Hang on a sec while I reach over and grab this. So this whiskey here should be released in early to mid-May. And what this whiskey is a Chardonnay barrel rested 4-year-old bourbon. And we rested this for a year in French oak barrels sourced from Cazenel Vineyards right over the state line. And Cazenel gave us, was able to acquire for us one 66-gallon French oak barrel that held Chardonnay for 11 years. So there were 3 different bottlings of Chardonnay out of this barrel. So it till about almost 4 years, the Chardonnay sat in there. Now the last time they dumped the barrel, they called me. They dumped it. So I picked that barrel up, freshly dumped. Just been dumped on Thursday. I picked it up Friday morning, and on Monday we filled that barrel up with 4-year-old bourbon. And the reason there's a distinction there, this is French oak. You can't age bourbon in French oak. In fact, it's illegal to age bourbon in French oak, but to finish bourbon is perfectly legal.
Yeah.
And so the bourbon is 68% corn, 12% rye, and 20% malt, aged for 4 years in toasted and charred white American oak, now finished for a full year in the Cazenel Chardonnay barrels. And one of these barrels, especially a 66, I estimate that the wood itself will draw in and hold about 3 gallons of Chardonnay. And it was still wet in the bottom. And so when we poured this in, there was a tremendous amount of Chardonnay in there. I look for a sweet wine to finish my bourbons in, not a dry wine, just to impart a little bit of extra sweetness to it, with the idea here that, well, you know, these French oak wine barrels, they're toasted on the inside. They're heated to relatively, usually about 500 degrees. And what they're doing is when they heat that oak, they caramelize the sugars inside. And then and then white wine goes into them. Now, if you poured white wine into a charred oak barrel, brown wine would come out, amber wine would come out. And so the idea is not to put any color into the Chardonnay, but to just give it that buttery, sweet buttery oak finish. And now that barrel has done its job with the Chardonnay, now we are working on extracting the Chardonnay and the rest of that sweet buttery oak finish out of there, just to provide that little bit of a touch and complexity onto the back of this 4-year-old. It's been in that barrel a year. I could never call it a 5-year-old because
that year doesn't count.
That year does not count. It only counts for the flavor. Now served to you guys at 100 proof.
Yeah, this smells amazing.
Yeah, you can smell the Chardonnay on that one for sure.
Yeah,
it's got a big sweet finish on it.
Yeah, that's awesome.
I mean, you can taste the glass of Chardonnay.
That's awesome.
I've only seen one ever on the market, but I remember when I was at the restaurant, it caught my eye, and so I had to order it and taste it. And I thought it was so lovely, and the fact that they're not just being widely made, that we had to give it a try. Again, we don't want to be better here, just different,
right?
And so we just look for those unique things around here to do.
Well, that was something I had mentioned before we started recording, was you just don't see a Chardonnay finished bourbon. It's more so your Cabernets and Merlot or something like that. But this is a unique trend that.
How do you feel like this is going to do?
Yeah,
I think it's going to be wildly popular.
Oh yeah,
I would agree.
There's only one barrel of it.
It's a big barrel.
It's a big barrel. Yeah, it'll yield us. Well, if I had to guess, probably about 350 bottles.
Wow, that's something I've always wondered is, as a novice, I keep saying novice, and I almost can't use that here in a couple months, but
you're progressing.
Yeah, but as someone from the outside almost looking in, it's like, you feel like you can't get that many bottles out of a barrel, but it doesn't seem to be 66. You just underestimate how much volume a barrel can hold.
The general rule of thumb is there's 5/5 in a gallon. That's why they call it a fifth. So if it's a 10-gallon barrel, it's got 50 bottles in it.
Wow.
If it's now you look around and you'll see 15-gallon barrels. Those 15-gallon barrels actually cost more than the 53-gallon barrels
to buy.
Yeah.
Wow.
So when we buy them, they're actually more expensive. The reason we do it is the aging requirements. Now this is a surface area to volume equation we're talking.
Okay.
The smaller the barrel, the faster the aging time, because there's more available surface area and wood per unit of alcohol. So a 15-gallon barrel will yield quite good results in 18 months if it's seen 2 summers, 24 months if it hasn't, to make sure it gets to those 2 summers. Remember, heat ages whiskey quite lovely. And so we want these barrels to see, on the small ones, at least 2 summers, on the big ones, at least 3. And that's why we talk about that high rye bourbon. It's actually gonna be ready in September, and it needs this one last summer just to get its final finishing. But what are we after in the barrel? We're after caramel, typically in the barrel. And caramel, if you put a caramel on the sidewalk in the summer, you're gonna have a pool of caramel. But if you put it on the sidewalk in the winter and you try and take a bite of it, you might break your tooth.
Yeah.
So heat is going to help really draw that out. Plus the big swings in temperature and pressure and humidity that are going to occur. You know, every time that whiskey cools off and heats up, it's expanding and contracting. And that's pushing it in and out of the wood, making it deeper into the wood, you know, when it's expanding, making that caramel more available to it to pull back out. That's why you can only ever use that bourbon barrel once. It's well, imagine making iced tea with your Lipton tea bag tomorrow, you know, with the same bag, right? And so almost all of America's bourbon barrels go to Scotland.
Yeah, for their
secondary finishing.
Except Jim Beam, I think, is now fully supporting Suntory Distillery out in Japan, because I think they bought Jim Beam just so they would have an endless supply of bourbon barrels. It's because Scotch is aged in these bourbon barrels. A Scot would never consider putting his finely smoked malt whiskey into a new bourbon barrel, because we get that bourbon flavor all over it. And what would it infuriate a Scotsman more than having bourbon flavor on his Scotch? And so it's perfect. In not only that, then these, you know, white oak is precious. And white oak is not on the rise in the world. It is in decline. So the fact that these bourbon barrels get a very, very long life. I've heard in some instances over 125 years of use on a single barrel.
Wow.
That would be quite a lot of uses. At some point, it just becomes a vessel. You know, at some point, there's no flavor left to give, but still useful. You know, over the long period of time.
How hot does it get in here?
We've clocked 89 in here before. We don't cool the back.
Yeah.
The only thing I do is keep it above 60 in here, so we can get nice big temperature swings throughout the year in here. Even in the wintertime, you come in, it might be 60 in the morning, but you know, it's not that big back here.
Yeah.
So once the still and the mash tun are up and running, we'll go from 60 to maybe 72, 74 even in the wintertime. So they're getting that good temperature swing year round. But summertime, they see it the biggest, and really they warm up.
Oh yeah.
Now, how long would you say is the max you could age something in one of the smaller casks for before it like just gets overbearing?
I mean, that's the $1 million question.
Subjective, right?
Yeah, there's a variety of ways to do this. So, you know, in 24 months in a 15-gallon barrel, we'll lose 20% of its entire volume to evaporation. We call that the angel share in the industry. Likewise, in the 53, over 3 years, maybe 3.5 years, we'll lose about 20% of its volume. So there's a 1/5 of everything we make on average. It just evaporates into the atmosphere. In the conditions we're sitting in now, if you want to age whiskey on the long term, there needs to be a lot more thought that goes into its environment. I'll put it that way. You don't want it jammed into a hot rick house. You'll get to 10 years and you'll want to open your finely aged 10-year-old whiskey and realize the barrels fell off the ring at year 9 and the barrel fell apart because everything evaporated out.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, so I mean, there's a tremendous amount of thought that goes into that. But I mean, hey, look, we're 3 years old. So don't ask us yet. I'll put it that way.
Yeah.
Well, let's dive into that a little bit. Wylie, let's talk about how this all started. How did Devil's Do get started? Because you just said this is only year 3. What got you into this? How did we get to this point right here?
We celebrate our 3-year birthday this month. So this is
exciting!
This
happy
is a big.
Just say happy birthday in the comments.
I I was in the Navy for 25 years. My brother-in-law, Brian, he's my business partner. I used to come home on leave a lot. I'd always sit around and talk with me and Brian would be having a chat. We always, talked about wanting to maybe do something after, he worked in government contracting for an equal amount of time as I was in the service. And we were both looking at retirement down the road a little bit. And so we started talking, well, maybe we want to do something. Maybe we want to manufacture something. And every time we were talking about it, we were usually sharing a glass of bourbon. Finally, one day we just looked down in our hand and said, maybe this is it, If you ever come by the distillery, in the front room is my first still, small 6-gallon copper pot still, just a little head on it, little tiny worm condenser. Built it from scratch. They're not hard to build. And that was probably 2015, I guess. And we started running that just to kind of understand, well, how do you... you had to understand how do you mash grain? Where do you acquire grain from? The grain has to be ground. How finely does it have to be ground? And then you start talking. Well, then we need water chemistry. We need to keep yeast alive. How do you do that? And so you do have to learn quite a bit. Mm-hmm. Understand how to produce the alcohol and then how to effectively distill it to what is coming out the other end of your still has got a decent flavor on it. And we found that, after a couple of years running it just kind of in our spare time, just to kind of understand what was going on before we get into this industry. But the whiskey tasted really good coming out of it. And we didn't make a lot. We just made honestly, I'll tell the public out there, it's illegal to distill whiskey. But there's no accredited school of whiskey in the United States either. And so how do you learn how to make whiskey? That is, and that's one of the biggest barriers to people opening a distillery. You know what caused the craft beer explosion? They started letting people make beer at home. I don't remember when that was. I think it was in the late 70s or the early 80s. And then a couple of years of guys making whiskey in their garage. And you ask, you said you're 22 years old. Ask anyone who was of drinking age in the early 80s if they went down to, the local steakhouse and they ordered a beer, could they get an IPA?
Yeah, probably not.
No, they were probably the typical standard 3-4 lager beers on draft. If you're lucky, you might have got a Guinness in the house. But no, there was no such thing as craft beer. And it wasn't until people started doing it that there was this explosion of craft breweries now that we see all over the United States. You know that the state legislature of West Virginia legalized moonshine this year?
That's what, yeah.
Is that wild? Well, what that says to me? It says that, first thing it says is all you folks in West Virginia can pull the still off the back porch and put it on the front porch now, because I know y'all got one. But now you can learn. You can maybe get try something new. And so I think there's a potential for maybe a small craft distillery boom in the state of West Virginia. Over 7,000 distilleries in the United States. West Virginia boasts 25. So we need, whenever I go on the radio or I go on a show like this, I tell everybody we need people to be interested in this type of industry because you can do it too. Yeah. You know what I mean? And so Brian and I'll get back to the story. We talked a lot. We had to learn somehow. We did a lot of trial and error, and then I retired and he retired, and we bit the bullet and scaled up. We didn't go that far. We run a 150-gallon electric still now. I call it the smallest commercially viable still in the market. It's it doesn't produce that much. It takes the whole crew a week to make one 53-gallon barrel of whiskey.
Wow.
So there's a tremendous amount of work that goes into it. And then once you make that barrel, it's 3 years of waiting to see if you made something that people are going to like. So there's a lot of risk involved in it. But he and I, we talked about it. We weighed the risks. We put together a business plan, and we tried to become businessmen and bring this place up. And Well, so far so good.
Yeah.
We seem to get a
We're here.
pretty good. We seem to get a pretty good reaction from the public anyway on the things we're releasing.
So why here? Why Kearneysville, West Virginia?
There's 3 national parks within practically within walking distance of here. It is a tremendously beautiful area. It sits nestled right between the Potomac and the Shenandoah, and so there's a lot of tourism here.
Yeah.
Jefferson County is probably the fastest growing county in the state, and so we saw that as well. And so there's a lot that went into calculus, but mostly we wanted a place where we could have a lot of foot traffic, but still a place where we could go down the street and buy corn.
Yeah.
And so Jefferson, I mean, man, I sound like a commercial, but Jefferson County really fits the bill, for the entire Eastern Panhandle does for businesses like this.
Yeah. I mean, having the national park, the scenic beauty of the county, how much agriculture still remains, as well as, there is growth, and it looks like there is growth in good area, in the correct area. And, as
perfect balance for you
the
guys.
county's already exploded, basically.
Yeah.
It's busting at the seams. It almost seems like in Frederick County, just below you all basically is growing just as fast. Yeah. And
plus you got Maryland to the,
Yeah.
just to the north. So we're 6 miles from the Virginia border in Loudoun County. There's a tremendous amount of wealth and of people over there.
True.
Run right into DC, just 45 miles away. Baltimore, maybe 50. And so, we're in a really good spot with it. And I mean, a tremendous amount of people.
Yeah. I mean, the 2 times I've been here, this is my 3rd time, but twice that I've been here, the people, the other members of the public that are here, the tourists, let's say,
They're from all over.
they're from all over. But the trend I've heard is Maryland.
Oh, yeah.
I remember the 2nd time I came, those people were all from Maryland. That couple that was just in here before we recorded, they were from Maryland. So I'm just amazed. Yeah, you are in that epicenter. You've got Route 9 that dumps people straight into Loudoun County. You've got 81 that's funneling people right by you all. So
340 goes both
Yeah.
ways into Virginia and Maryland. Yeah,
So
we're at a unique crossroads here. It's not only full of history, which people are interested in, national parks, people are interested in natural beauty, plus all the water sports that are available in both rivers. I don't know. I mean, for a distiller, it's a pretty darn good spot to be.
yeah, it's a good spot. Yeah, was Jefferson County home for you, or Virginia home for you? I know you were in the service for 20 years, but
Yeah, so I grew up in Virginia. I was born in Alexandria, actually. I left there in 1996. Now, when I left Northern Virginia in 1996, I grew up there in the 80s. It sure looked a lot like Jefferson County back then.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And but when we came back, it seemed like a natural fit for us to land, for me to land over here. So we live locally, we work locally, we try and support locally. Local is a amazing word for small business. I can put it that way.
Yeah. I think I can't think of another business like your all's where you've taken local partnership or just local investment and, capitalized it on as much as you could, because just walking through your gift shop, your tasting room, which has gifts in it for purchase, the amount of things in there that are locally sourced and produced that you all sell, it's just keeping that
relationship,
but the circle of investment into Jefferson County, stay in Jefferson County. That's awesome to see. It's probably, you can elaborate more, but I remember hearing one time that like the shirts you guys use and, they're produced, a local person puts them on there, and, the soaps that, whatever you've got in there is pretty much all local artisans.
Oh yeah. Yeah. I mean, I would say there's about at least 50% of our merchandise products. And I would love to see that grow even more. Are made within probably 25 miles of the distillery. Now, that's going to include the Eastern Panhandle, a little bit of Maryland, sometimes a little bit of Virginia, but all, just because we're so close to all those places. Trying to keep it all right here, it just makes sense. If you want to start a new business, There's no reason to use national chains for. In fact, I would recommend against it. I mean, local banking. And I'll give a plug for the Bank of Charlestown. Those are the people that helped that made this place happen. Why did we choose them over some big bank? Well, because we can walk right into their office and sit down and talk with them. It's not on the other end of the phone. And that's, I don't know, maybe that's my own preference.
No.
I would much rather be able to drive over to your place and talk about the product that I want from you, or vice versa, than
doing it via email.
Yeah.
Like you said earlier, doing it the old fashioned way.
Hey, look, there are cost benefits of buying everything from China. It is cheaper. But when people come in, they don't appreciate that. You talked about the soaps. They're made over in Shanghai, Berkeley County.
Yeah.
Right. Not China. Right. And it's kind of ironic. Right. But like, our candles are made here in Jefferson County. All of our mixers are made over in Berkeley County for our spirits. Our T-shirts are produced, and a lot of our apparel is produced up in Hagerstown, Maryland.
Yeah, right across the river.
Just right across the river, right? But yeah, all these little things. We have glassware that the local guys are blowing, and creating it. And so we try and bring all of these things together. And then usually about 2 or 3 times a year, we'll bring all the vendors in that we buy merchandise from, plus others, and we'll have like a craft show, a vendor show, and then people can come in and check out what they're making. Memorial Day, guys, keep an eye out. We're going to have the biggest vendor show we've had ever. Normally we had been limiting it to around 20, and I think we're at about 45 vendors now. So
wow.
It'll be a really fun weekend if you want to come out and just see what all the local people are making, drink a little whiskey. I'll let you in on a little secret. We have applied for the proper licensing to start serving our spirits and cocktails. And so down the road, probably sooner than later, when you come here, you won't just come in and do a sampling, but you might be able to instead have an old fashioned. Try our Orange Crush; it's pretty amazing.
Yeah.
Our maple whiskey sours are off the chain, and so there'll be a variety of cocktails you can try our spirits in, if you don't just want to come in and sample them straight.
Mm-hmm.
Cask strength whiskey isn't for everybody.
Yeah.
Well, that's why we make moonshine. And we've got a whole variety of flavored moonshines and flavored whiskeys too. We just released our root beer bourbon last year, and that has been, hey, you know what? That great story. I'll give somebody else a plug here if you let me. Denise and Carl up at Berkeley Springs Brewing. They have a root beer on tap up there that you got to go try. And I went up there unrelated about a year ago. And I was having a discussion with them about something else, and a guy came in and said, "Hey, I need to. I'd like to order some of your root beer." And she said, "Well, I think she said I don't think it's carbonated properly or something like." I can't remember what she said, but I just remember the guy said, "I don't care. I want a growler of your root beer to bring home. It's that delicious." And that's when my ears perked up because, well, for the whiskey maker, we're interested, when we make flavored whiskeys, we're interested in what that flavored whiskey, that other component is. And so I asked for a taste of it, and damn, it was really good root beer. And I said, man, that'd be really good with the bourbon. So I got a growler of it and brought it back, and I blended it with some bourbon, and there was something that just wasn't right. And so Carl and I worked on the formula for about 6 or 8 months. Until we got the syrups just right for it, all of the different botanicals and extracts going just right, so that when we blended it with barrel-proof 4-year-old bourbon, it had that. Well, you know what I wanted to give you was the taste of that root beer barrel candy, but with a big bourbon finish on the back of it. So it should be all root beer up front and all bourbon in the back, and that's what we shot for as we took it.
That's what it is,
and that's what it is.
Yep. I got a bottle whenever we came out last time, and. I was just so excited. I had my mom tasting it, my fiance tasting it, and they were like, they're not whiskey, they're not bourbon people. So at the first half, they were like, man, this is really good. And they're like, there's the bourbon. And I'm like, that's fine. Cause it's like, I loved it because it's that, and having friends over, and it's like, check this out. And that's what I love about you guys so much is it's you guys produce many products that I can make an experience with other people, my family or my friends. It's like, here, have you ever had Cherry Bounce? Let's try that. And these are college age kids that are like, I've had Bud Light and, vodka straight. It's like, that's it. So for them to be able to experience that, I love to be able to, create that and facilitate those experiences with them. And the root beer was a great one for me because I loved it. I thought it was great. I've still got some of it. Yeah.
Your generation is getting to that age where you've drank all the college spirits. Like and don't get me wrong, they're enjoyable. There's a time and a place for all of those college spirits, but there's this other thing out there, and I am also starting to see, and I think it's a national trend, is that our demographic is coming down in age, and that younger and younger people are kind of interested in experiencing what this thing is. That these dark spirits are. There's a place for Jack and Coke. Yep. Right? There's a place for bourbon and soda, and and on all those, the whiskey sours and all that. And our spirits go great in those things. The old fashioned you can make from a whole variety of our spirits. There's a whole variety of different old fashions you can make there, from wheat whiskey old fashions or rye old fashions to bourbon old fashions. And those, man, they're the classics. They never get old. And those younger people are starting to discover them, and that's why they never get old,
Yeah.
The great thing about classic cocktails, excuse me, is they're made from 1 to 3 ingredients, no more. In fact, the best ones are 2 ingredients. 3 ingredients might be pushing it, but those other ingredients must be readily available in everybody's house. And that's why the rum and Coke, or the old fashioned, or so all these classic cocktails that never get old, are so good because anybody can make them. Anybody can make them at home. They're easy to make, and they're delicious at the end of the day. You get some of these cocktails out there where you start pushing 4, 5 to 8, 10, 12 ingredients.
Too much stuff.
Well, and then you got to go buy that one bottle of that weird stuff
that's going to expire in your fridge, and then that's it.
Stick to the classics.
Exactly.
And you'll never go wrong. And when you have people over, make a cocktail.
Yeah.
Make it. We can always crack a beer, but if you're gonna have people over for dinner or something, have cocktail prepared.
Yeah.
Offer them a variety if you want. Take your time. Do a little bit of homework. It'll spice up the evening, especially if you have, I don't know, if you can find all local ingredients too. Then there's a whole story to that,
exactly.
and a conversation to be had.
Yeah. So what about? I was like, I cannot forget to ask this. I feel like I've heard it before, but I want our listeners to hear it. How does the name Devil's Due come about?
Well, I told you all the barrel aging whiskey's fraught with peril. Hell, they could leak all over the floor. Sometimes they just start crying. But really, the biggest thing is that all that evaporation occurs. We talked about white oak and how white oak holds liquid very, very well. Well, it sure does, but it does not hold vapor very well. So you got 53 gallons of bourbon inside of a barrel, and it's getting hot during the summer. Well, that wood is soaked on the inside. The white oak grain is so tight it doesn't allow the liquid to penetrate all the way through. But the gases created from the evaporating water and alcohol, they're more than happy to find their way right through that wood and evaporate right out. And that's why I told you we'll lose maybe 18 to 20% of the barrel. They call that the angel's share. The old distillers realize there's nothing we can do about it, that it's necessary function, necessary part of it. And so we give it to the angels. That's what they get. We call what's left in the barrel the devil's due. And I always tell people but at the same time, I call whiskey what it is.
Yeah.
We are also surrounded by a very dangerous liquid. In fact, if you're not careful with it, you could kill yourself. It's something that you always have to be. In fact, if you're not careful with it, you could kill somebody else.
Yeah.
Right? Like it's something that you have to treat with respect. And so, but originally it's a play on those words. You know? But I just tell people, I say, look, I call it what it is.
Yeah.
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 It's a good way to put it, though, too. For sure.
Yeah. I always, the name I found interesting because it was like, oh God, devil worshiper.
There's got to be a story behind it.
But I was like, yeah. So hearing you earlier talk about the angels,
Whimsical. We are. We avoid the words like evil. We definitely avoid the S word. We do not talk about things like that. These are the experience is meant to be fun and enjoyable. And then, hey, if you come by the distillery, in those cases, it's family friendly and educational.
Oh, it's great. It's a great time here.
Yeah.
Yeah. And another thing that I noticed right away, and I think this was what drew me before even visiting, was your bottles. And specifically with your bottles, the labels, they're classic. You can, they're hard to compare to others because everyone else kind of follows the plain Jane of text on a, cylindrical bottle. And you guys have a distinct shape in bottle, in my opinion. And then your labeling is so unique and so well thought out. Every little detail in there, I feel like when you look at it, is like they thought of every single thing in there. Do you have any information to provide on that?
Absolutely. So in this industry, what goes into the bottle is incredibly important. But what is on the outside of the bottle is, in my opinion, equally as important. In the distillery, in the industry, we call it getting liquid to lips is going to close the sale. When you come in and you taste my products, there's a really good chance you're going to buy them because you got to try them before you buy them. But from afar, if you're just looking for a product, then you need a piece of, in my opinion, I call it label art. You need a really, really nice, finely designed label to help demonstrate that what is in the product is also finely crafted. And I've seen some beauties out there. Mm-hmm. Oh my gosh, I've seen some beautiful labels, but and bottle shapes as well. We use standard bottles here. Because we can't, we're just so small. We haven't grown into the point where we could have our own. There's a lot of bottles out there with impressions and in the glass with the names of the distillery on there. Boy, that's a tremendous amount of money.
Yeah.
Now we'll grow up and we'll grow into that. It takes time. So we really focus on the label art. A lot of our small batch labels every label is hand press stamped with the contents inside of it right across the label, and all of the label designs are done in house. We've got Ken Walker, our graphic artist, works here full time, and he's pretty much chained to his computer at all times. But and we then work. Well, he's really good at taking design ideas out of my head and then creating products out of them. That, being a distiller, having a small shop like that, one of the things I love the best is probably my favorite thing is product development.
Yeah. Is
taking an idea, us sitting around and we come up with an idea, and then from scratch we build it from soup to nuts, from start to finish, all the way through. We decide, hey, we're going to make this certain kind of whiskey. Then my job is to go acquire all of the pieces to put it together. So to bring in the grains, to bring in the bottles, bring in the labels, and do all that kind of behind the scenes hard work. Well, the artwork is being developed, and then we try and bring everything, and then the whiskey is being produced, right? Because we've got to take all that time, get it into the barrel, or if it's a moonshine, design flavors for it. I mean, these a whiskey might take 2 to 3 years to age. A moonshine might take a year to develop the flavor to get it right. Now once they're up and running, that moves a little faster, but everything takes 6 months to a year, start to finish to develop. And even through our merchandise, how we do that, but developing that product is really interesting. And getting back to the label, it's really important to, I think, pour a lot of heart and soul into each individual label, not just to provide product differentiation, but really to give something maybe that's collectible.
Yep.
That is another great marketing tool in the bourbon industry, by the way, is making collectible items for those bourbon hunters.
Absolutely.
And then it's always new content. Like, well, what are we gonna? I got a little secret. You guys ever heard of the Mothman?
Oh yeah.
Yeah. So
local lore.
Yeah. So that right, but in West Virginia, it's probably got name recognition like Jim Justice. Almost 100% probably. Everybody's heard of the Mothman. And so we're developing a label. I haven't decided what I'm going to put in it. I'm either going to put a corn whiskey or I'm going to put a rested corn whiskey into it. And we're going to release that this September during the when they have the Moth.
That's awesome. Capitalize on it. Yeah.
Cannot beat it.
But that we've got a few label developments or labels in development, but we're really going to try and make the label look like a really cool piece of art. And so keep an eye out for that one. It'll be fun. So stuff like that is just a blast. So we have a really good time with this.
Well, and I think too, the label art speaks to the customer just as much as the whiskey does, because it shows, if you're putting this much care and time into the quality of the label art, you're doing the same for your product that's in the bottle too. So, I mean, if you're in a store and you see that on the shelf, you're like, wow, that's somebody put some time and some thought into that. What's behind that label should be the same. Should be a good representation of the same.
It's the one advantage we have, that we're small and nimble and flexible. We've got a great deal of creativity going on in here, and those are the little things that set us apart from, like, you go in the liquor store and there's the same label. You see, they got the whole middle shelf. There's 500 of those bottles on there. But you start hunting around, around the shelf to the smaller ones that might only have 1 or 2 slots in there. That's where a lot of the gems are,
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, 100%. Well, and there's so much you can do with it too. There's so much, whiskey has and bourbon has its, outlines or guidelines, but there's so much that you can control as far as, components in the mash bill and that sort of thing that make each one unique. Just as much as you can change a label, so can you change, the mash bill and that sort of thing. And it makes it uniquely you guys, as far as not just the label, but what's in it as well.
We don't make one whiskey here. If looking around the barrel room, there's
so
probably
much different
15 mash bills up there.
Wow.
So what will you never get from me? At least probably not in my lifetime. We'll see how long this, my oldest son runs my marketing and distribution right now. So who knows, how that's my dream right there, is maybe there's a legacy there. But you'll never see consistency out of us. Not in a long time. You'll never see that we'll always have the same thing on the shelf all the time. It'll always be something new. It's never going to maybe taste exactly the same. You'll
never have the same thing twice.
You go to one of these big boys who has global sales, and when you buy a bottle in New York, or you buy a bottle in Japan, or you buy a bottle in South America, exactly what you're going to get.
Yep.
And that's a very strong selling point. And it's something we could never achieve in our lifetimes. These are big companies that they have hundreds of years of experience in some cases. Mm-hmm. Yet we look at that as one of our primary. It's probably our primary strength right now. Is that it's always going to be different. For example, take Brian's Prime whiskey. Now, when we mash Prime bourbon, it's a 4-grain bourbon. And Brian's a nut about numbers. And so the mash bill is made up of the percentages of the corn, rye, wheat, and malt are always prime numbers. And I think we just put Prime 11 into the barrel. You're holding a bottle of Prime 1 right now. Every single time we make a barrel or that batch, then we tear up that mash bill and we get a new set of numbers.
I love that.
And so we've released Prime 1 and 2, 3 is coming soon. But again, instead of trying to make a product where we're going to try for consistency, we said, well, at our size, we can't. In the wintertime and in the summertime, our whiskey tastes very different. And that's just because of the heat and the fermentation, and there's a million different things that are back in the day, most distilleries shut down for the summer because it was too hot to ferment. And and there was no, and there was no consistency there, whereas everything's temperature controlled. All fermentations in big distilleries are probably done at between, I don't know, 76 and 81 degrees or whatever to create their very specific profiles, certain esters. We can't reach for those all of those finer points right now. So instead we take advantage of what we can do, and in prime, for example, we'll change it every time. And the only thing you'll see is just a different big number on there.
Yeah.
And then you say, oh, well, yeah, I remember the prime, the very first one. And man, that tastes a lot different from this prime 7. But, oh, the prime 3, that sure was, that is the kind of hype we're hoping to achieve. And then for the avid collector, I think some of these are pretty cool collection bottles.
Oh yeah, I'm excited to finish off my Cherry Bounce and root beer and add them to the lineup. And I think that's something to respect is the idea that it could be a fault of that you can't match what you've did the time before. A lot of people would pull out their hair and quit and give up, and some people might be so fixated on trying to recreate that one thing that they want to do, that specific whiskey or the specific alcohol. Yeah. But you all embraced that, that idea that you can't, replicate exactly what you did before. You've embraced it and you've capitalized on it and just gone kind of crazy in a good way.
Over time, I probably won't sign every bottle.
Yeah.
There'll be too many bottles. Over time, our consistency will come better into line, but that takes money, that takes equipment, that takes experience, and so those things will occur over time. But what you're getting right now is a pretty unique, interesting product. Yeah, and I don't know, it's a joy.
Well, that's the thing, is it makes you guys uniquely you, because you're not getting the same thing twice every time. So everything that somebody's getting is something new.
Yeah.
And that's part of, I guess, with this bourbon craze going on right now, is people are always looking for that next new thing. And if you guys are always providing that next new thing, I mean, that's
I will be more than happy to provide you that next thing.
Exactly.
Don't try and be the best.
Like the Chardonnay finish.
Like that. Yeah. So what's next for Devil's Due? What's the, what direction are we headed in? If we come back in a year, are we going to be recording in this place? Or are you guys, packing up and moving to Kentucky? So what's next for Devil's Due?
We're not going anywhere. No. We want to, I want to put Jefferson County on the map as a place that makes really, really great bourbon. We got bourbon and racehorses right here. Come on down to the track and drink our bourbon by trackside, But growth is a big one. We are expanding. We have completed our site plans now to double the size of the distillery. Wow. That's going to be a multi-year project as we kind of feather things in. We're sitting on 9 acres here out in Kearneysville, and we plan over time to develop most or all of that land, probably over like a 10 or 12 year plan. Awesome. From now to get that in development, get the other rick houses up, bring in bigger
other rick houses. I love that.
Yeah. Well, yeah. I mean, you see how
you're running out of room.
Yeah. I mean, I got to drive a forklift.
I'm sitting on a barrel right now.
Yeah, that's all it is.
I know.
And they'll just keep stacking up. We'll go from 150 gallon still to an 800 gallon still. So it's about, I don't know, what's that, about 6 times the size that we're at now. So instead of 1 barrel a week, it'd be closer to maybe 6 barrels a week we'll be able to start producing.
Wow. And so then more staff too
for the future. Yeah. It's always more staff.
Gotta hire more people.
Always something.
We will be, and probably sooner than later.
Wow, that's exciting.
So folks, keep an eye out for that if you want to. I would say it's a pretty unique job opportunity.
Oh yeah, not too many people. I've ran into a couple people that are like, I want to be a brewmaster and want to make beer at a microbrewery or whatever, and I'm like, in an alternate world, I'd love to work at a since being involved with this and just learning the world of bourbon and whiskey.
Yeah.
And I've toured Washington's distillery, what they've recreated out there in Northern Virginia at Mount Vernon. It's beautiful. It's a beautiful recreation. And I've been to these other small ones too. And it's an experience, I feel like the wine train is always going to be there. People are going to want to go to wineries. The breweries are its own little thing, but the distillery, experience in and of itself is its own experience. And to be able to provide it to people where they don't have to travel to Kentucky just to do that, they can come here in the Valley. They can, my hope, and this is, something I'd love to see, is the Shenandoah Valley, including you guys. We welcome you. I feel like there's a division at times with the state lines, but in my mind, it's all one big valley. Yeah. And I'd love for there to be a spirits, a bourbon trail here in the Valley. There's so many distilleries that people can experience, and there's so much to do here. And to that, I think tourism is it's one of the largest industries, especially in West Virginia, driving the economy, but specifically in Virginia too. Tourism's massive. So to be able to create an experience out of these distilleries, I think is something that you recognize, and I think other groups recognize, and it's continuing to grow. Yeah. And I love it. And I love to experience something different at every place. And I think just with distilleries, no matter where, specifically here though, you can experience something different every time you come, which I love. Yeah. Yeah.
Now, as far I have one question that I don't know, Jack, I don't know if this has crossed your mind. As far as with the expansion and as you guys get older, do you have any standardized age statement in mind for what you would like to ideally do, or is this going to be something that's like a new every time?
It's distilleries are generational growth. This is not something that occurs quickly.
Right.
So we'll come out with a 3-year-old this year. I have several barrels destined to become 4-year-olds. That'll be our bonded bourbon series. You can actually taste that recipe in the Distiller Select bourbon that I think you've got over there. That is I call it a very standard bourbon mash. It's a very high corn, a touch of rye, and just enough barley to do our conversions and give it that good smooth finish. That one you're holding right there, our Distiller Select bourbon, that's a 2-year-old, done in the 15-gallon barrel, but the same mash bill is in the 53-gallon barrel. When that's 4 years old, that will become our first bonded bourbon. And so this year we'll release 3-year-olds. Next year we'll release our first bonded 4-year-old, and then we'll have to start putting some thought into how do we grow to 5 years. You look around, you see a lot of barrels on the wall, and they represent a tremendous investment. And the distillery must recoup that if it's going to ever move forward and grow, it must recoup that investment. So when you're talking about the small volumes that we make, is how do you and so now it's how do we lay those barrels down for the longer term, and be able to operate without recouping that investment for even more years down the road.
Right.
And so it takes it's going to be some time before we hit the 5-year-olds.
Because you got to put some product out to begin with to even get yourself going, to even continue to think about, an older age statement or anything like that.
And that's why you're tasting whiskeys out of the quarter cask right now.
Yeah.
Out of the 15-gallon barrel, simply by the fact that the maturation time is shorter in that barrel, still being able to yield good, excellent results on the whiskeys. When it comes to the 53-gallon barrel for us, it's a minimum of 3 years old, but waiting that long, and then having to put that much money into those stocks, that the recoups have to happen. So I think we'll probably have to move to a larger still before we'll be able to lay enough whiskey down that we can sell 3-year-old, we can sell 4-year-old, while we're waiting for the 5-year-old to come in. And then so I would say it'd be a good number of years, probably somewhere between 4 and 6 years before we'll probably be able to release. There might be 1 or 2 surprises in here that
can't give away all your secrets.
Yeah. But I'd say, otherwise it'd be some time before you see the longer ages coming out of us.
Yeah. One last question I have, and this is something I've thought about. No matter whether it's a distillery or brewery or winery, as a distiller, how much whiskey or alcohol do you consume on a daily basis at your job?
Well, I tell a lot of people I don't drink alcohol out of glass anymore. I only drink it out of wood.
Yeah.
And
Vessel.
and typically and oddly, when we do whiskey tastings, it's like if we do them, for the purpose of being able to describe the barrels, we do that at like before 7 o'clock in the morning.
Oh, good.
Mostly
Lord.
because you don't want to have a lot of coffee. You don't want to have eaten a lot of things before you're sampling barrel
palate.
proofs. Your palate should be fresh.
Yep.
And that's the times when I can pinpoint the most notes, and little subtleties in the whiskey. And I'll consume it out of the barrel at barrel proof. And then I'll consume it like when you guys were tasting barrel proof. I had a little bit of ice in mine.
Yeah.
A little bit of water. I'll add to it. Sometimes I'll proof it all the way down as far as maybe 60 proof, just to really open it up and then allow it to kind of easily linger on the palate. When you're drinking 125 proof whiskey, the alcohol is evaporating so quickly off your palate, and it's confusing your taste buds that it's masking all of the flavor, a lot of the flavor that's inside of that whiskey. Now, when we consume whiskey, especially if we're going to have to do a few barrel samplings in the morning, it's usually a quarter ounce.
It's not that much.
Not that much, yeah. I mean, well, you could have real problems in a distillery if you're not careful.
It's a hell of a way to start the day, though. 6:30, starting a mouthwash.
This stuff can kill you if you're not careful. That is not a daily occurrence. And so no. So I do my best to minimize my consumption.
I've always just wondered it. I'm like, they're always sticking that, and that's another question. Last question I had was the I don't know what you call it. Is it a straw? The thief?
Whiskey thief.
Yeah.
Thief?
It's a whiskey thief.
Okay.
Pulling the soda straw out, with your finger over the top. Then you can capture that whiskey without, one of those barrels weighs 600 pounds.
Oh my goodness.
It's not like we can just tip it over. Even these 15-gallon barrels are lugging them around is really not feasible without a forklift, So we use the thief to draw a small amount out. Then there's usually be a panel of us. When we'll sit around the circle like this, we'll have little cards, and usually me or one of us will lead the discussion. All right, this is the first one. This is how long it's been in the barrel. This was the distillation proof. This was the barrel entry proof. This is the barrel exit proof. The age of the whiskey, the mash bill of the whiskey, what we're expecting, and then we'll taste it at barrel proof. And then everyone will go around the room and everyone will give their impression. Well, what notes are you tasting in it? Well, what does the aroma smell like? What is on both you got you have taste buds in your nose, and you have smell sensors in your throat and in the back of your mouth. And so all of those things, and then you need to be in a quiet room and stop for a minute and really focus on it. And more people should do that when they drink whiskey, have a glass, quietly and just kind of let it roll around your mouth and see what different notes you can pick up. Sometimes it's the ester vanillin that is present in the oak. Always it's a caramelly flavor, and that is the caramelized sugars from inside of the wood, smoky and oaky. But then you get into the sweetness of the corn, the spice of the rye, the grassy floral notes that wheat could bring, and then that good malt finish on it. And then you start looking for all the other notes. A lot of times we'll use a whiskey wheel. The American Distillation Institute has one you can download, and it's pretty neat. It's a wheel of just a little wheel on paper, but it's broken down into a whole ton of pie pieces, and each one of those has major categories and minor categories. And so one will be like, the woodiness of it, and then, the variety of different, is it oaky? Are there piney notes in it? Are there, this and that, all the way down to in the wheats, baked goods?
Yeah.
Does it taste like, like fresh baked bread. Are there cinnamon rolls in there, or the fruit side? You get a note of currant in there, or maybe a citrusy note. And so this wheel encompasses all of these different characteristics, and it helps the person who is tasting the whiskey say, "What? Oh, if I read it and I saw it, that's the note I'm getting there." You can even, for the real enthusiast, I think you can find this on Amazon, but there's a lot of whiskey websites that'll have it. There's a kit. It comes in a big box, and you open it up. And there's always little vials inside, and each vial is the matching smell aroma that's on that wheel. And so you can say, well, I wonder if that's currant. I'm tasting or smelling in there. And so you can pull the vial and you can smell it. And then you can, if you really want to pinpoint these whiskeys, and that's what professional blenders and tasters will use to help them
educating your senses.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's like, do I think it tastes or smells like currant? Let me confirm that with, that makes a lot of sense. Wow.
And to the professional, that's important. Mostly because the professional distiller, when he's selling whiskey and he's talking about it with customers, is educating them on those different notes. And you would really be surprised the change in someone's eyes when you tell them, hey, these are the things you should expect to taste, and then they taste it and they pick up on some of those notes. Smelling and tasting is a skill like anything else. It's typically underutilized in America, I think. People just, they know sweet and they know salty really, really well in this country.
That's about it.
Yeah.
But if you practice it, you will, well, first of all, I think you'll find that eating and drinking becomes much more enjoyable.
Yeah.
And it's not just a thing that we have to do, 2 or 3 times a day. And so you should practice it and understand what you're consuming in your body. And it can be make it a lot of fun.
You're to hear from Wylie, smell more. Because that's a thing you don't think of it. You're always used to smelling the bad things. It's like, oh, why am I smelling that? And start smelling the good stuff.
Yeah.
People don't smell flowers anymore.
Yeah.
Go smell flower.
Hey, come over
Smell
here.
your whiskey.
Yes.
Smells are free at Devil's
Smell
Due
the
Distillery.
It's a great smell. I'm going to capture this in a candle and locally make it and sell it in your gift shop. You got any other questions, Elijah?
I think one last thing, and this is just merely subjective. What is your favorite or your ideal mash bill? What do you think
Good question.
makes the perfect mash bill?
I mean, so I'm a weeded guy.
Me too.
Brian, my brother, he's a ride whiskey guy.
Jack.
So kind of like you guys. So it balances really well. But yeah, a good weeded bourbon. One of my favorite weeded bourbons. It's not even. I mean, even though I think we make a lovely one, but get yourself a bottle of Antique 107 by Weller.
Yep.
Smells like flowers. How did they get that whiskey?
How do you bottle that?
Flowers? And how did they get that unique, lovely, amazing smell in there? And I made now look, I'm not saying I'm anything like them. Like I said, we're trying to be different. But I've made a couple wheat whiskeys and a couple wheated bourbons, and I get some of those notes every once in a while. I use that I think it's one of my favorites, so I use it as a standard. But when I get some of those grassy floral notes in it, it just makes me so happy because you know what it is? For me, it's validating.
Yeah.
Now I'm not saying they taste the same. I'm not saying mine is et cetera, et cetera. But the fact that I can validate some of those things with my nose and my mouth and say, you know what, we are definitely on the right track here. People are going to enjoy this. And it's just a really, really, really fun journey, I guess.
Yeah.
But yeah, wheated for me. Although I got a wheat whiskey, you guys should come try. It's let me get the mash bill. I think it's about 60%. Maybe it's a high 50s on the corn, high 50s on the wheat, mid 30s on the corn, filled out with a little bit of malt. And it's just a lovely one. It's got a really, really
This one?
yeah, that one right there.
Yeah, the 51% wheat, 39% corn, and 10% malted.
So, I mean, interesting here, right? So our wheated bourbon is 23% wheat, and then mostly corn. So this one kind of a flip-flop. So it's got the bourbon notes in it for sure, but it's a wheat whiskey because it's made from 51% wheat. we did a fun study in rye. We did a 51-49, 51% rye, 49% wheat, making it, well, is it a wheat whiskey or is it a rye whiskey? Pretty wild, right? That's Ken. Oh, sorry, I don't mean to yell. That's Ken's baby. He's across the other side of the room. He goes, this would be wild. Like, is it a wheat whiskey? Is it a rye whiskey? What is it? But just kind of wild, and so it's fun to play with the mash bills.
Yeah.
And
you guys have a lot of fun.
Yeah. I mean, it's what it's all about. It's having fun.
Yeah.
And making stuff taste good.
No, it does. It does. Anything else, Elijah?
I think that was my burning question. What's the perfect mash bill?
Yeah.
Man, thanks so much for having me on.
Yeah. No, if listeners are ever coming to this side of West Virginia and you're visiting Harpers Ferry National Park or Antietam, or you're coming to the Shenandoah Valley to see the battlefields there, or anything, whatever brings you to the Shenandoah Valley of Virginia and West Virginia, you got to come to Kearneysville, West Virginia. You got to come see the guys over here at Devil's Due. What's the address here?
Yeah, we're located in off the Bardane exit of Route 9, and that's 315 James Burr Boulevard in Kearneysville, West Virginia. Just a few miles north of Charlestown. Hey, if you're coming out to the casino, we're about 8 mintes away.
Yeah,
right up the road. So if you're staying there for the long weekend, you can. Number one, you can try our whiskeys at the sports book.
Okay.
In the casino. And you can try them at the final cut in there if you like, in your favorite cocktails. And if you like them, you can swing by here and pick up a bottle for the room. Furthermore, you could go to any of the local liquor stores down there in Charlestown or the surrounding areas and pick us up as well.
Yeah, I was. I would just tell folks, if you're coming to Devil's Due, you got to come through 81 to get on around to get on 9, just to do the 30 million roundabouts to get here. So that's an experience in and of itself. But I was at Big Apple, the liquor store, Inwood, right? Inwood, West Virginia, and I saw the little Devil's Due corner, and they were all sold out the day I went there. So.
I'll have to give them a call.
Yeah. I think they had like one bottle left of something, but I was like, oh my gosh, Devil's Due is here. So what's the plan on distribution, with getting into maybe Virginia, ABCs or elsewhere?
So currently we're distributed in West Virginia, Maryland, Washington, D.C., a few select locations on the special order list in North Carolina. And we just started distribution in South Carolina. And so you'll find us from Greenville to Myrtle Beach out there. It's at select locations as we grow down there. Virginia, we are still trying to get into Virginia.
Good luck.
A control state.
We can't put in a good word because it's the government, so we don't know anybody.
The only thing I can do is ask you to ask your local Virginia ABC store.
Yes.
And if your customers, they ask for our product there, that product will end up there.
Okay. Well, we'll start asking.
And we just need to. We will get in some of our spirits into Virginia eventually.
Yeah.
They've got a extra set of stairs.
100%
to get into the state.
Yep.
But we love everyone from Virginia. Everyone that supports us over here. They're all bureaucracies.
Oh yeah.
It is what it is.
It is what it is. Well, but thank you, Wylie, so much for letting us come here and record. This has been great. And, thanks you folks for listening at home. If you're ever here in this area of the country, come and visit Devil's Due Distillery. It's an experience that you definitely want to add to your memories. It's a time well spent. You got one more thing?
Yeah. Hey, look, just the Google knows where we're at.
Yeah.
They can always, I call it the Oracle. You just ask the Oracle, it's going to get you over here. Find us on social media, on Facebook and Instagram. We do not have a formal website. We're a small place. But Facebook is our primary means of communicating out to the public on when our new releases are going to be coming out. So keep an eye out for us there. Follow us. Oh boy, would I love that.
Yeah.
If you do, then we will periodically, but not too often, come up in your feed with some amazing little nuggets for you.
Yeah. Well, awesome. Well, thank you again. And thanks everybody for listening, and we'll catch you on the next one.
Thanks, guys.